Hey, Philip. Lighting is not good. Might need to change this. Hello. Hey, 1 second. Just rearranging a couple things. Oh, all right. Let's see how that is. All right, that's better. Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm at reInvent this week, so I don't have my normal setup. Kind of reconfigure the hotel room here so that you could actually see me. Cool. All right. So how's everyone doing? Where's everyone calling in from? These are new names I don't recognize. So yeah, I see G, you are unmuted. Why don't you tell me where you're from?
Hi, I'm Gyanendra, and I am a software dev at Booking, and I'm calling from Amsterdam.
Oh, awesome. Nice. Cool. Well, happy to have you here. Yeah, why don't you kick us off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing with OPA and what you're hoping to accomplish and how we can help out?
So actually, we are planning to, so basically, we were looking to implement some kind of a policy engine, and yeah, we were trying to do a POC. And yeah, so I looked at different options, and so basically, you know how it is, like some people prefer to build their own, and I basically looked at some of the open source alternatives, and I zeroed in on OPA, and I quite like the option. And from the open source, like the GitHub, it looked like a well-run community, and the GitHub likes and stars, I think they were good enough for me to be able to say, like, yeah, this is something, like, if it works out for my POC, we can move ahead with this. And I'm basically, this week, I'm trying to do a POC to see if OPA suits all our needs of policy engine.
Okay,
So that's
cool.
yeah.
Awesome. And what does your POC entail? What are the components that you're putting into this? Like what looks like a successful POC to you at the end of this?
So basically, a successful POC would be something that would allow us to. So basically, if we are able to run, so what we are trying to do is, like, automate some of the. It's part of DevX. So basically, we are trying to automate some of the things, and as part of that, we are trying to also impose certain restrictions on the software that is being run. So, for example, like, based upon the criticality and the frequency, certain, for example, SLO requirements that you need to meet when you run capacity testing or different things. So we want to be able to basically create policies around these, and then say that, like, hey, these are the services which meet the requirements. They do not meet these policies, and so on and so forth. So being able to do these things, and yeah, like some questions around, like, whether it is possible to, like, in the policies or something, uh, run remote code or something like that as well, like other code snippets as well.
That's an interesting one. I guess it depends what you're trying to do.
Is that a common thread? Is that something? Because I can think of a way of not doing that as well. I can think of it as a, what, anti-pattern kind of thing, where by doing that, you are kind of violating the policy engine principle, maybe,
Yeah,
and have it as an
yeah,
executor outside.
There might be a hacky way to get it done, but yeah, I would say that it's not a common pattern, right? Like the common pattern here is more of like an idempotent kind of policy where every time, right, every time a policy is decided, the same input should always come with the same output. And so if you're executing remote code, you could have different outcomes depending on, like, there could be a problem with how that code was run that time, and your policy could then change the decision with similar inputs. And so like it introduces variability that may not be desired.
Okay.
Cool. And what and you just said services kind of generally, what services are you working with? Like what kind of technologies?
So at Booking, like we I'm part of a centralized team, which is kind of trying to impose these restrictions and also ease out some of the operational burden. And as part of that, like we are trying to think of like policy engine kind of checks. And to answer your question, basically, yeah, like all kinds of technology like Perl, Java, and Python, Go. So various services written in different frameworks, different languages.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like OPA is very flexible. Yeah, the one thing we like to say is like start small and build out, right? Like understanding, like picking one of those use cases and really fine tuning the policies around that, and then kind of adding more technologies as you go. Like because it is so flexible, we do see people who try to tackle too many services at once at the beginning, and then they don't. It's hard to wrap their mind around the overall architecture of what they're trying to do. So like we typically like to say, like start small, pick like one service to start with, and then just like once you figure out how that one works, start adding in more pieces. But yeah, cool. I mean, it sounds like you're on your way. We're here to help. Once you have things implemented and you have questions, just let us know, reach out in Slack or join these again. Yeah.
Sure. One question I have is basically, do people when like, so you would have seen different examples of people setting up their policy engines. I've just started looking at it. So is it generally that like, so the alternative that we were looking at basically like was we started off with like something like a policy will return you like true or false kind of thing, whether it kind of passes or doesn't pass. But then we saw certain use cases where like, based on this policy, tell me what kind of tests to run, for example. Are these kind of things that are that is useful or?
Yeah, and so OPA works really well with structured data, right? And because of that, right, the input and output doesn't necessarily have to be a Boolean, right? You don't always need a true false, right? You can do a fair bit of data manipulation with the input and the output, right? Like if the input does contain like identity data, JWT tokens, all that sort of stuff, right? Then you could do something with that information and say, with this information, I want to create some sort of hash key that then validates something else. And then so you can kind of work with the inputs and outputs there so that the output then triggers off another workflow or something, right? And so you do have a lot of flexibility around what that output data looks like and what you want to do with it after that fact.
Okay, got it.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for the questions. All right, and then I guess if you have no other questions, I'll move on to the next person.
Yeah.
Cool. Saurabh, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Saurabh. So I work as a senior security engineer at Lime, and basically.
Oh, Lime, the scooter company.
Yeah, scooter company. Yes.
Okay, cool.
So basically, I was like the founding engineer, security engineer here at Lime. So I'm just like trying to ramp up the entire security program here. So one of the challenges I've seen is scaling authorizations at Lime. I think it has reached a stage where it can become a very huge headache for the engineers who are currently owning it. So I'm trying to onboard them to use OPA as a method to transition from a role-based access control model to attribute-based access control model.
Cool.
So basically, my goal is to use OPA in such a way in the application to basically create a new authorization service, which people can just like access using APIs, and which can return like a yes or no answer if the person is allowed to access that particular resource and do certain actions on that particular endpoint that that needs to be done. So I would just like to know if there are any kind of reference architectures, or if any company that you know has done this in the past. I would like some reference in creating that POC that I'm trying to create.
Yeah, so with that, right, OPA can be very specific to what type of authorization you're trying to do. So maybe you can give me a bit more details on what types of authorization are we doing here? Is this authorization for customers and users that are trying to access specific items? Is this authorization for engineers to create things within your internal application? Like, can you fill me in with a few more details?
Okay, sure. So basically, this is an internal application. So
Okay.
Lime is a very operator heavy company.
Mhm.
So whatever, we have three kind of customers. First is the riders who ride our scooters. Second is the
Mhm.
operators who are like helping us to have a fleet which can be operated by the riders. And there are
Mhm.
cities that need some kind of help or like data from us in order to find them whether we are meeting the requirements that were mentioned in our proposal that we RFP that we mentioned. So basically, this authorization that I'm talking about is only for our internal operators app, where
Okay.
the three different kinds of operators are allowed to perform a set of tasks. And there is a lot of like ad hoc behavior based on the attributes that is not explainable. Like, so we already have like a role-based access model, but the thing is there are a lot of like requests to ask additional permissions, requesting like ad hoc behavior which cannot be like targeted or like solved with the role-based access control model. So there are some attributes that I want to like introduce in this authorization model, which can help them to scale this entire authorization in their operators app. So to your question, this is an internal application that is used by people who are non-tech, like they're not technical.
Gotcha. Okay. Here, let me send you. Just posted this. We were at KubeCon earlier this year, like a couple months ago.
Yeah, I
And
attended the KubeCon, but I was not able to like access your. I actually attended virtually, so I don't know whether your session was available virtually or not.
yeah, but as that we did a day zero event for Cloud Native Policy Day.
Okay, nice, nice.
And so those videos just got uploaded like a week ago. So let me grab
Okay.
you real quick. And I think some of those will be helpful to you. Let me find this link here. Cool. All right. So I'm gonna drop this in the Zoom chat. Yeah, and so here there's a couple of videos here that I think might be helpful. Right, like Chime did an interesting one where essentially they have like a policy builder, like just like a GUI on top. So they abstract all of the policy building away from the people who are making them, or they abstract the Rego writing away from the people making the policies.
So yeah, actually, I want to do exactly that. So I want to abstract away the policy writing and abstract the entire authorization logic away from the developers to the people who are actually doing it. Like suppose I'm an operational manager. I know that, okay, my operator in Melbourne would need these specific permissions, but usually this role does not need that permissions. So I want to abstract that entire authorization logic away from like, so basically it does not need to go to a technical engineer to create these kind of roles or changes in their conditions. He can basically like, enter like in simple English, which can be converted into Rego, and then the authorization will be applied accordingly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think definitely check out the Chime talk.
Okay.
And then I think that's the most relevant one, but you can like the other ones there are pretty interesting. So you can like kind of browse through those, watch them at double speed or something, and just kind of
Okay.
get some ideas of how other companies are implementing
Okay.
Open Policy Agent, and that might trigger more specific questions. And then as you
Okay.
are and then as you are like getting to the point where you're creating something, then you can like come back and ask us more specific and targeted questions.
Understood. So I think my first goal is to like show that this is something that can be done and like basically get people on board with it. So first thing is I'll be trying doing is like creating a POC. So should I just like reach out to you for these office hours for that?
Yeah, these office hours are a good spot. GitHub discussions is a good spot if you have like a technical code examples. You're like, hey, I've implemented this and I'm not getting the output that I want. And so you can like drop all the code samples in GitHub discussions and we will answer them there. Or just like if you have general questions, you can ask them in the Slack channel.
Okay.
Cool.
So I'll check those talks and then let you know if I have any specific questions.
Sweet. Sounds good. All right, cool. Yeah, do either of you have any other questions? We still have about 15 minutes left in this office hours if you guys have anything else.
I have a question. So basically the way I'm thinking about this whole thing, what like in the whole setup that like if we go ahead and like implement it, what we want to do is like allow people, like allow different service owners to set up their own policies. And in that way you kind of, so we want to allow like other teams or developers to write their own policies. One of the concerns that I have is like the learning curve associated with writing like policies.
Yes. Okay.
And so for example, like if I look at OPA, this is there is a learning curve associated and all the things that come with it, right? Like with great power comes great result. Like you can screw up different things. Now, on the other hand, like if I look at a simple, like, you know, flowchart kind of system with just trying to evaluate like matches, ins, equals, or kind of operators, and something very simple. And like I can do some kind of UI to basically make it very easy to construct those rules. So what would you say to that? Because I know like, so I like this tool and I'm going to push for it and I'm going to implement it, but then I see that coming as a counter argument. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, and so with that, Rego can get very complex very quickly if like kind of, if you're just like writing willy-nilly and just like letting that sprawl happen. What I would say there is being very organized with how you're doing your packaging and naming, right? Like Rego is a full-featured language, and so because of that, you can create it in a way that's much more digestible. But you could also create it in a way where no one understands what each rule is doing. But if you have packages that are very specific to the tasks that you're doing, and then the naming schema that you use for each of your rule heads, right? Like a lot of people have very generic allow rules, but if you're trying to get adoption to happen, right, you might want to use rule heads that are much more specific to what you're doing. You say allow creation of EKS for operators, right? Like, and so making sure that what you're doing, like taking the extra time for how you're writing your Rego for the initial examples, so that way, when new members are starting to review what you've done, they're going to see the clarity of what you've done. And then it becomes much easier for them to say, oh, I see that this can be done in a very easy way to adopt, right? But if everything is done in a way that's kind of ambiguous and you read the policy and you're like, I don't understand what this is doing, then it becomes a much easier thing to push back on. And everyone's like, I don't know what you're doing with these policies. So I think that it's just taking that extra effort in the beginning to write very clear and concise policies for what you want to do.
To follow up on that, Peter, I posted a link in the chat. The company I'm from, Styra, has been working on Open Policy Agent since the beginning. They're actually the ones that donated it to the CNCF. And they have a nice set of basically pre-built courses, a little academy, if you will. And it's nice because the courses cover a lot of the basics for when you're first starting out with Rego. And so, you know, if you have a bunch of engineers you need to onboard, the courses are free. So it's a fairly quick way to get them up to speed on at least the basics and some of the like really weird things like you can only assign a variable once, you know, and some of the other little rules that trip people up initially. Can also be good because I think there is a performance course as well that covers some of the optimizations that OPA has had for a while. And that can help if you run into speed issues with some of your rules.
Yeah, this
Oh.
this looks promising. Yeah.
And
Yeah, rather
one-
than like so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say also, if you run into absolutely crushing performance issues, we'd love to hear about it in the Slack, GitHub discussions, or in office hours, because we do consider performance to be really important. So if you're running into huge issues, that might be a bug.
So that is one of the biggest problems to any kind of new implementation that we suggest. Like basically, like we as engineers, we know how good this OPA is, but the other people who do not want to implement this, they will get back to us with like speed and optimization issues. So
Yep.
if you have actively like some work going on for that, this can help us a lot.
Yeah. We spend the OPA team at Styra spends a good bit of time trying to make things be fast. And we take performance reports very, very seriously.
Okay.
So yeah.
So basically, your competition is with like in code, like conditions, like if conditions or something, to make those decisions.
I
So
would say that the open source open policy agents competition is dealing with like you've probably done this before where you've had to implement your own custom little RBAC system for every little application.
yeah,
OPA allows you to abstract over that. And instead of having to get all the fiddly little stuff right and write like 100 unit tests to make sure you got it right, instead with OPA, you can get it right once and then copy paste, most of your policy logic between services and you're good to go. And the application logic then typically shrinks down from being, hundreds of lines of code down to like maybe 20 to 50 that handle sending a single HTTP request over to OPA and getting a result back and doing something with it.
Yep. That is exactly like,
it's a world of difference in terms of like simplicity. It's nice.
It is nice. Yeah.
That is
Especially
exactly
like if
the
you can,
use case that we are trying to basically have, because it's not just like the code becomes simpler, but also like it's easier to probably make changes. And like, for example, like if you, like every time you do not need to go and make changes in the code base, like you just test policies. And then like once you deploy the new policy, it kind of works out of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, if y'all run into issues, definitely GitHub discussions, the community Slack. These are pretty good places to ask for help.
sure.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Well, if that's all you guys have for now, I'm going to say thanks for joining the office hours. And yeah, we'll look forward to hearing from you guys in the future.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Cool. Talk to you later. Bye.